Hello, welcome back. Day three, 5 day mastery mapping challenge. And I am very pleased that you have chosen to join us today. I'm just going to wait a little moment, get everybody into the room. We're going to have fun today. We're going to talk about time, managing time and space, being epic time and space masters. Hello, Sean. Welcome. Glad to see you. Will, good man. I can only imagine it is silly o'clock in Australia right now. 3 a.m. 3 a.m. I think. That is that is commitment. I love to see that. Christoph, how are you? Good to see you. Bader, my man, how are you? Yes, I hope that I can provide you value. I hope that this is interesting for you, for everybody here. Right, let's get into it, right? Time management. We're going to talk about time management. I don't actually believe there is such thing as time management. I believe it is priority management. If people are struggling with their time, it means they're struggling with their priorities, and that is the problem. So today is really for anybody who is finding themselves maybe starting a lot of tasks, not completing things. I'm going to show you my strategy to overcome those things, because mastering time will help you master your space and your being and your life and everything, getting things done. So, as I said, I think it is all about prioritizing, understanding what is important, what is it that I want to do, and how am I going to get it done. Maybe the way you've been going about it hasn't been working for you. That is okay. Forgive yourself and commit to learning something and trying something new. And that's what I'm going to offer you today. The opportunity to try something new, try something different. So the thing is about us human beings is that we are stimulation seekers. We want to be stimulated. We might have about 25,000 tabs open on our desktop. We might have 400 playlists open and we're listening to them all at the same time. Hopefully not, because that'd be a mess. We might be having about 50 conversations going on in Messenger, Skype, Zoom, wherever we are. And in terms of life, you can choose that. You can choose to do that. But in terms of multitasking, that is a disaster, an absolute disaster. If you want to get things productive and completed in your life, you might find that that is not the best way to go. So having multi-tabs, multi-focus is an absolute disaster. It's my enemy, and it is what I have in my sights, and I'm out to get it. So I'm going to help all get it in where it exists in your life. The thing about it is that like we want to be stimulated. So the idea, and it's part of the brain. We know that we get hits, and to be honest, Facebook, Twitter, all these companies, I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying that they've hacked human beings. They know how to give us that dopamine hit that we all love, that we all seek, and it's through notifications. So you are being drugged by your brain into doing all these things that are not working for you. And that is what we are going to look at today. How do I have a strategy, a formula that I can use to get me away from being a drug addict, basically? And we all are. I'm not saying that you're alone. I'm saying that we all are. We're all addicted to the hits. But we can set up our stall to overcome that, and we can all not be drug addicts. So this is what I've written in your workbooks. If you go to day 3, we're going to be looking at the strategy that I call the 2C, 2P, or the 2P, 2C method, which means that we have 4 stages where we look at what it is that we're doing, what's important to us, and how to do that. Now, just a couple of things that I recommend before we get into that is I really, really recommend that you turn every single notification on your phone off. Now, you might be thinking, Rob, what are you talking about? I need my notifications. And I'm going to argue that you actually don't. You don't need your notifications. Before the crazy, cool, amazing phones that we all have were invented, we didn't have notifications. We did everything, things got done without notifications. So I'm going to recommend that you turn every single notification on every single app off, except your phone calls. That's what a phone is for, taking phone calls. So, because they fuck up our ability to focus and they lead us towards multitasking. When you're in, I mentioned this yesterday, when you're in a task and a notification goes off, you become diffused, you become distracted, and your focus goes onto something else and away from what you are doing. Like, this isn't complicated. You, the phone companies know this. They're not evil. They have just, there's an incentive for them to gather our attention. And if we let them claim it, we're responsible for that. And so a little bit of personal responsibility, taking that personal responsibility, you can best do that by turning all your notifications off. And that's how you reclaim your creative focus. So that's really what I recommend that you all do. Yeah, if you feel kind of frustrated for not getting things done, I would like you to declare this to yourself right now. I am responsible for not getting what I want done. Say it loud and say it proud, because that is the truth. But don't beat yourself up about it. Do something, and let's look at what it is that we can do. One very, very important thing that I recommend that you do. I love an audit. I love a empirical verification of what is happening right now with our time. And one website, an app that allows you to do that is called rescuetime.com. So if you install that onto your laptop and onto your phone, you'll be able to see, there's lots of these types of apps. You'll be able to see how much time you actually spend on all of the different apps that you use. And that is interesting information for you to know, because some people are spending more time on their phone. I spend a lot of my time, my business is basically on my phone, so I have to spend a lot of time on my phone, but I schedule that into my calendar. So I do emails, I do social media at certain times, I write at certain times, I read at certain times. All that gets scheduled into my calendar, and I'm good to go. Now, do I fall down sometimes? Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't have any halo over my head. I'm still learning. I'm much better than I used to be. Way better than I used to be. Much more productive. But I'm not perfect. And perfection doesn't exist. So we shouldn't be aiming for that. We should be aiming to be better than we were yesterday. Another app, if you're on Facebook, that I really recommend, and they won't like me mentioning this, is a Chrome extension called Facebook Newsfeed Eradicator. There is no version that you can get for your phone, but I really recommend that you download it for your laptop. What that will do is it will basically take away your newsfeed, and you won't have any newsfeed to distract you, because so much time gets lost by people just like aimlessly scrolling through their newsfeed. And what I recommend you do is to bookmark certain groups like this one that you like going to, and allocate a time every day to go there to see if there's been any posts. That is the way to check up and follow up on what it is that you like to do on Facebook. Maybe there's some certain people whose posts you like. Schedule time into your calendar to do that. Maybe it's half an hour, maybe it's an hour that you want to do that every day, every 2 days. And go and specifically look at that. That's going to make you way more productive. It's going to help you claim much more of your time. And it's a good thing to do. Now, I want to talk about Pomodoros. This is where the Pomodoro, so there was a guy called Pomodoro, I think his name was, and he invented this technique on how to do time. So the length of our cognitive capacity in one specific sprint is around 30 minutes. We have 30 minutes of very good concentration and focus. And this method, um, it it promotes the idea that we block off 30 minutes of our time and concentrate on doing what we have to do in that time, and then take a 5-minute break. Get up, go for a glass of water, go get a bit of fresh air, and then come back and then do another Pomodoro, which is about 30 minutes or 35 minutes. I do 35 minutes is one of my Pomodoros. And the idea is to do Pomodoro, to estimate your tasks in terms of the length of how many Pomodoros it would take. And that allows us to gamify ourselves. So if we've set ourselves 2 Pomodoros, which is 2 sprints of 35 minutes, 70 minutes to do a task. If I know I've set myself 2 Pomodoros, I'm going to be trying to beat 70 minutes. I'm going to try and aim for like as low as possible, maybe 50 minutes, because then I'm winning time back. And then I can go on to the next task that's on my calendar. So I recommend incorporating the Pomodoro method. There is a really good Chrome extension that you can download, which is called Time Blocker, I think it's called Time Blocker. And you can set up the length of a Pomodoro that you want to have, and it's very good. I would recommend using that. So another thing I want to encourage you to think about implementing are buffer blocks. So what I mean by a buffer block is chunking your day in terms of, okay, I'm going to do email and social media in the morning, or I'm going to do it in the afternoon, whatever it is that you choose. But block off certain amounts of time for very specific tasks so that it is untouchable. You're not going to eat into that time. That is very specific for certain tasks that are going to move the dial for getting what you want to do done. And this is related to the overall picture of what I've written in the handbook. So let's talk about this 2P2C method. Firstly, it's important to really get the ideas out of your head. So this is the biggest problem that people have. Like, the brain is an incredible creation area. It's probably the most sophisticated piece of technology on planet Earth. And a lot of us use it as a storage facility, which is not what it should be used for. It's actually a shit storage facility. It's probably the worst storage facility you could imagine, because memory is incredibly limited. And if we leave our ideas in our head and we don't get it down on paper, don't put it down somewhere physical that we can then reflect upon it, we lose it, because memory is crap. It really is crap, and we shouldn't rely on memory. We should get our ideas out of our heads down onto paper so that we can see it in front of us. Because how many times have you forgotten an idea? You've probably come up with the best ideas ever, and then you don't put it down on paper, and then you go back and you go, geez, I had an idea for like the best business ever there, and then it's gone. That's why our memories are terrible. They're like sieves. So stop fooling yourself, and don't use your brain as a storage facility. Get it all down on paper. And that's what I mean by step 1, phase 1 of this, is to plan out every single thing that you want to achieve, experience, accomplish. And like, go really meta. Go over the course of like your whole life. Start overviewing your life. Step back and go, what do I want to actually achieve? Every single thing that's alive within you. Like, that's a big, broad question, but do it. How many times do people do that? It's a really good thing to do. Dream big. Aim high. And you might resist doing that because there's a number of reasons. Fear of success, fear of failure. Lots of fear comes up when people dream big. Think about the things that constantly come up in your mind? Dave Allen, a guy who wrote a book called Getting Things Done, calls these open loops. And an open loop is something that keeps reoccurring in your brain. It's like, I must remember to get my suit dry cleaned or something like that. But sometimes they're bigger ideas in our life. And he calls them open loops. I'm sure you have your own open loops that you're aware of that you've probably been meaning to get to. You're putting it on the long finger and you mean one day to eventually get to it. Those types of things. In the planning phase, get all of those things down onto paper. And not only will that stop you feeling sort of stressed and anxious about all those things, you'll look at that and go, wow, I'm actually proud that I see what it is that right now I have in front of me that I want to achieve. And let's call this big, huge list of everything that you want to achieve, let's call this the master list. So that's the first step. Plan what it is that you have in front of you. The second step, what I would like you to think about is after you've done that. So I don't want you to do that just yet. Let's just listen to the whole method. The second step is prioritizing. So from that master list, there will be a shit ton of things, and that is going to be overwhelming. So what you should do is you should go through the list and decide what is the most important and what has the most urgent deadline for you. And pick the top 3 to 5 things on that list. And really start to think of those things in terms of what is the main priority that you want to get done. And start thinking about what other. So what my recommendation is to pick one really main thing and 2 other smaller but manageable things that you could do within the next 12 weeks to a almost complete phase, or an almost complete. So say you wanted to learn a new language, coding language. Now, within 12 weeks, that's probably a little bit of a stretch, but you could get to a certain milestone. You could learn a certain amount within 90 days or 12 weeks. So that's what I mean by having one main priority within a 90-day cycle. So I really recommend that you break your year into 4 quarters or 90 days. And that's what we'll be working on over the course of 90 days. Because the reality is that you cannot do everything at the same time. So if you've got, like, from your master list, a load of things that are going to take you a lot of time, you can't focus on them all. And that's just impossible. And you'll overwhelm yourself and you'll annoy yourself. So picking very specific things. You could probably pick 2 main things that you want to work on to a stage to achieve a level of competency that would make you happy. But I recommend picking one main focus and a couple of other manageable things that you want to work on. And this is including all of your other obligations. Obviously, you need to think about your life, and if you've got a job or if you're going to university or your relationships, all of these things need to be added into the mixture when you're thinking about these things. The question you should be asking yourself is, what if I completed this? What would I be able to scratch off my master list if I got to a certain level? And then when you do pick those things, I would recommend that you scratch those things off your master list, because they're things that have changed in terms of your focus. If you go to the end of the 90 days and you think to yourself, if I have that done, how am I going to feel? It's good to think about your master list and say, okay, I can scratch that off now. And there's a great feeling that comes from that. It's very rewarding to be able to say, wow, I'm actually getting through this. I'm making strides. I'm moving towards what it is that I want in my life. So after you have those top 3 things, decide very specifically what is the outcome that you're aiming for with those things. And let that be the focus of your 90 days. So that is step 2. If you have any questions, throw them into the thing and I will get to them. And in the workbook, have a read through the workbook. And again, if you've any questions about this, throw them into the comment section and we will get to that. So step 3 is the chunking stage, right? And what do I mean by chunking, right? So let's take an example. Say you want to write a book. There are going to be subtasks involved inside of that writing the book. And over the course of the 90 days that you're facing, you will not probably write the whole book, but you might be able to begin on the research of that book. You might be able to do a number of interviews within that 90 days. You might be able to research maybe 5 or 6 books very specifically related to what it is that you want to achieve. Maybe you need to, there's many different subtasks, but you will know what those subtasks are and make them very, very specific. I would even go as small as thinking how many Google searches I need to do, or picking certain topics very specifically that you need to discover and write about, and think about, okay, I need to write a certain amount of words. Very, very specifically think about the subtasks and chunk them down so that they're so specific that you know exactly what you're doing when you put that into your calendar. Say it is, I need to write 5,000 words on Cicero. It's a very specific thing, and you know, because it is, maybe it actually isn't very specific enough. Maybe you need to chunk that down smaller and say, I need to write about the philosophy of some Greek philosophers, and who their influences were. And you need to write a specific amount of words. Maybe it's 1,000 words. I would put that in and I would estimate how many Pomodoros that you need to dedicate to that. And in the 4th step, that's where it goes into the calendar. So very specifically chunking down the tasks of your overall goal and understanding exactly what needs to happen. In some cases, you won't be able to do that. And that is where doing this chunking down 2 weeks before, when you have more clarity. So the first stage of the chunking happens when you're thinking about the 90 days, but I recommend also every 2 weeks, even chunking further down, so that I do it on Sunday nights. I prepare my week and I chunk down exactly the types of tasks that I have ahead of me, and I dot them around my calendar in places that suit me around my life. And I also put all of the, maybe I have client meetings, I'll have all of those listed as well. When I'm going to cook my food, when I'm going to go to the gym, well, I can't go to the gym now, but when I'm going to do exercise, all of those different, when I'm going to read, all the different things that I want to do are going to be visually represented inside my calendar. And be realistic. In the chunking stage, you really need to be realistic and understand that you may not know what you need to do, because it might not be clear. Maybe there's certain tasks that are not clear until another piece is done, or maybe you're reliant on another person on a team that you're working on doing something else. But don't let that be the reason that you don't try it. And to be honest, at the start of this, if you do try it, you're probably going to be terrible. And I'm just saying that on the outside, you're probably going to be really bad. It's going to take practice for you to get used to this. So be patient with yourself when you're doing this, and allow yourself some frustration, because you're going to be frustrated. But it's worth it. It is worth it, because this is a surefire way for you to get from the start to the finish of a goal. Absolutely. Because you're breaking it all down, you're putting it into the calendar. It's basically your relationship with yourself that is only going to stop you from doing it. So when you have this very specific list of things broken down, and they're going to amount to the completion of the task, you'll have a big, huge list. You'll have a really, really massive list. You'll probably have step 1 to step 300 of very small little subtasks that equal the completion of the goal. And that's where we go into stage 4, which is the calendar stage. I really recommend Google Calendar. I know some people like the Outlook. I don't. But whatever floats your boat, right? I like Google Calendar. I think it's really easy to use. It syncs up well with a lot of things. And it's just my preference. Maybe you have a different preference, that's fine. But use a calendar. Use a digital calendar so that you can reflect on something that is in front of you. You see a visual representation of the completion of your goal. And then after you've created the step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, up to however many it might be, start placing them into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And you'll be able to see, okay, by Friday I'm going to be at this stage. And you'll start to get a sense of, okay, I should be halfway through. And sometimes you might not follow through. Something might happen. Life happens. Things get in the way. But that doesn't mean you throw away your plan. You need to then reshuffle some of these obligations that you mightn't have gotten to and, kick them into the next day. And maybe they all need to move forward. And that's fine. Don't let that be the reason that you throw the whole house of cards up in the air. And as I mentioned, think in terms of 2-week increments. Revise after every 2 weeks and notice and be able to pivot. If you're behind, move things a little bit forward and keep calibrating this. This is a relationship issue with yourself and your ability to pivot with your obligation. If it's important enough to you, you'll do it. And that's the reality. If it's not important, it shouldn't have been your priority in the first place. The whole process does take about 10 to 20 hours to really chunk everything down. Get yourself in the mindset of thinking, okay, what am I going to have to do to get this to the end? That takes a lot of introspection, and most people don't do it because that is the hard part. But it is so worth it. I really recommend that you try it. You'll see that it is actually incredibly worthwhile. And you'll feel good. And then all you have to do when it's all done is execute your plan. Sounds easy, right? Well, it is actually surprisingly easier than you think. A couple of things that might come up for you when you do this. You will feel frustrated, but don't let that be an excuse to give up. You'll probably find that you have not chunked things down small enough. Think in terms of Google searching. Think in terms of having 5 conversations, making 3 phone calls, writing or designing 2 graphics. Think in terms of that as small as subtasks and dedicate as many Pomodoros as you think to each one in your mind, and then put that into the calendar. You'll make excuses for yourself. You will make excuses. This is what your brain does. Your brain offers you excuses all the time. And then it becomes a case of, are you strong enough to not follow your brain down rabbit holes it offers you in terms of giving you the excuses to run away from your plan? Because you're really running away from your life and what you claim is your priority. These are not my priorities. I'm just giving you a methodology. This is really a test of your mettle. Are you dedicated to your mastery mission? That's the question. You might miss some subtasks and you will forget to reschedule. And then that's a great excuse for you to say, oh, fuck this. I've missed it. It's all gone. It's not. It's not. You can catch up. Even if you've missed 20 subtasks, you can move things into the future. Schedule things backwards. You can do it. And you can win time back. You can do things quicker. Know that like it's going to be a challenge, but like all of life's challenges that are worthwhile are worthy challenges to overcome, because there's something at the end for us. It wouldn't be your priority if it wasn't worthwhile. This is going to be character building and resilience building for you. But I really recommend it. Like this is your relationship with yourself, which is what we're going to be talking about tomorrow with Kevin Flanagan. This is where you'll grow. This is a sense of you overcoming yourself and that part of your brain that wants the easy way out. Don't give yourself that option. Be strong. What I would recommend is when you've done one 90-day cycle, to do a review and look if you have completed 80% of what you have put in front of you. If you have completed percent, I would consider that a success, because then the last 20% of what it is that you have to do, you can kick into the next 90-day cycle. And 20% is really small. And you can get that done in a relatively short space of time. So that is what I would say to you. At the end of the day, like I realize that like time management doesn't exist. This is all about priority management, and it's yourself. What am I making a priority? What is important to me? Like these are deep questions you need to ask yourself. What is important to you? Is it worth getting these things done? Or are you going to just fob things off and say, oh, I'll do it another time, I'll do it another time? You won't. It's a lie. You're telling yourself a lie. And you're jumping out of congruence with yourself and out of integrity with yourself when you do that. It's really bad for us. It's really bad for us. So I recommend that you give that up. Yeah, this is the relationship with ourselves. This is really all about the relationship with ourselves and our commitments to the things that we take on as obligations. Don't take big things on if you're not willing to do them. Don't claim that you want to do them. Throw them away. Get rid of them. You're only going to frustrate yourself. Be realistic with yourself. It's taken me about 5 to 6 years to get good at this. And I'm still not where I want to be. That's the reality. Universe is better than I used to be. Universe is better because I'm dedicated to the system. I'm still not where I want to be though. I sometimes let my excuse machine win and I kick my obligations down the road, but I go back and I reclaim them and I move them forward. And that's what I recommend for you. So why not start today? Why not? That's the question that you should be asking yourself. So I would recommend that you have a read through the workbook. I've explained it in much more detail in the workbook. And if you've got any questions, now is the time to ask them, because that's all I've got for you. Shit, 33 minutes. Didn't think I went on for that long. Okay, what have you got? Agnieszka, how are you? Paul, how are you? Diana, how are you? Sylvia, good to see you. Colleen, how are you? I don't have a smartphone. Now that is amazing. I really actually think that that is amazing in this day and age. Amazing. That is resilience, Agnieszka. Love that. If you don't need one, you don't need one. They're really handy though for my business. Okay, Will says, that's difficult as I get notifications every second on every social media app and other apps. However, I'll turn them off for now. So what I recommend is give yourself Twitter time, give yourself Facebook time, give yourself Instagram time, and dot them out. Maybe have 3 of those 15 minutes spread out, diffused around the day. And that will give you a sense that I will get to it, so that you don't have to always be sidetracked by your notifications. And you're in control then. You're the master of the apps, not them mastering you. And that might be a way around it. It's a question of how urgent are those things. And in 99% of the cases, the answer is not really that urgent, right? Absolutely. Some things we think are urgent, but they're not. Like, what is it that you really want to get done? What's your part of your mastery mission that you actually want to get to ASAP? Those are the things that I would use the method for. Because if you're not doing what is absolutely important to you, what's the point? What creates the urgency then? So that's, yeah, I agree. I wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for the notification though. That, yeah, but you could have, if this was important enough to you, you would have put that into your calendar and known from last night when you review your calendar for what's in the day. That's another important thing. What I really recommend is that you review your day the night before so that you see what's in front of you. So you're not blindsided by, you know, what you've put into your schedule. Notifications are good for giving you the sense, like I do still have notifications on my laptop. So my Google notifications will come up on my laptop. I'm talking about phone. The phone is what distracts us. The phone is what distracts us the most because they've got noisy alerts, which are just a killer for our productivity. Apple has something similar built into iOS and maybe Mac OS now. It's in the settings and it's called Screen Time. Cool. How have you found it? Is it useful? I recommend FB Purity for Firefox too. I'd love to know more. I've never heard of that. Agnieszka says, I make a lot of lists of what I need to do, but they turn out to be unrealistic. Yeah, that's quite common. I'm asking too much of myself and then I don't follow through. I'm asking the wrong questions, I guess. It's like, what should be done in a perfect world? Not what can I really do? Yeah, the second question is the most important. What can you really do is all that matters. In a perfect world, our brain will give us a perfect world, but that is where perfectionism, the land of perfectionism, and perfectionism doesn't exist. Perfection doesn't exist, excuse me. I'm unrealistic with deadlines and I'm not good at pushing myself. This is why an audit is good. Get a sense of your realistic output. What is the realistic sense of how much you can get done, and go with it. Work on that, because when you have that realistic sense of your ability, then you can map into your calendar what is mostly reliable in terms of where you can get to and the milestones that you can achieve over a shorter period of time. And then when you've calibrated that in your own mind, then over the next 90-day cycle will be much more smooth sailing because you'll know what's realistic for you. So I'm unrealistic with deadlines. I'm not good at pushing myself. I also get overwhelmed emotionally. I hope these tricks will help one step at a time. I'm already addicted to making lists though. Well, lists are only so good until we execute them and chunk them down into the very small particulars. So that's maybe where you've been going wrong. You haven't been chunking down into smaller chunks. Diana says, my problem is that I'm involved in a lot of very different projects. So I would be realistic about all of those projects and allocate times into your calendar of how much time they're going to take and be realistic about that. Because when you calibrate that and you understand how much each of your projects takes, you're getting a good sense of what else is left, where you can place other parts of your mastery project. I love all of them, and I know I'm able to go forward with all of them. However, this makes it difficult for me to focus and not jump from one task to another. I'm working on a grant application, let's say, but then I remember that I forgot to send an email to someone, which is unrelated to the current task. I'm not sure if the problem is that I have too many things in mind and that I don't know how to focus. I think that's a chunking issue. And I think it's also a case that you're not allocating very specific uh, buffer blocks on your calendar to very specific things. There's probably a lot of things distracting you. Yeah, like if you know that you've got an email to do, put that into your email in your calendar. Say, okay, like in the description of the section of your calendar, say during email time, say have to email this person related to the application. So have the specific things that you have to do in email time so that you can get to them all at the same time. I'm not sure if the problem is that I have too many things in mind and I don't know how to focus. Do you have any suggestions on how to better focus on one task at a time? Again, like I just mentioned, if you're doing the application, then that would be in my calendar application time. If something comes to my mind, I'll take a little note of it. And then when I'm finished that task, I will put that note that I've just jotted down into my calendar in the area. The next available slot for email, I would just say, I have to send that email. Does that help? Does that answer the question? Andres, how are you? How about learning something new? Since I don't already know it, I don't know exactly how realistic appropriate steps or goals look like. How would you approach this in the chunking stage? So what I would say is I would create a buffer block if I'm learning guitar, say. I would dedicate, I would look at my calendar and say, okay, what's the available time that I have? And I would get very specific around what it is that I was going to do. So if I wanted to learn a song, because I can play the guitar, learning a song would probably only take me about 40 minutes. If you're learning how to play a instrument, I would say learn a very specific thing. So if you were learning to play the guitar, I would say learn how to transition between chords, 3 chords, maybe A minor, C, and G. Learning how to transition between them and allocate maybe 40 minutes to that. And then as you do that a certain amount of times, you'll see your ability improve over time. If that became the goal, I would maybe do that 3 times, and then you'll see a very specific improvement in that very specific goal. And then the next day, maybe take a different key, maybe take A minor, G, D, like whatever it is. That's how I would chunk that down into something very specific. And then over the course of a week, you're going to notice some specific improvements if you've done 5, 6 of those chunks. Does that make sense? If you've got a different example, maybe we could have a conversation and we could talk about that. Krzysztof, if one has a lot of variation in his sleep time and wake up hour, like 7 o'clock to 1, that's big variation. Is it sensible to make a flexible day plan starting with the wake up? So I would really look at making that wake up time, if you can, much more structured and routine. That variability is big. I don't know your circumstances. I don't know if that's absolutely necessary, but getting up at the same time every day is what I would recommend, so that no matter what hour you actually start your day, you have a clear plan. Is it possible that on the week before that you would know what time you were going to get up? Because like I do a lot of my very specific planning and then chunking and adding on a Sunday night, and I know what time I'm going to be up at every day. So I have predictability, and predictability is definitely an important part of this. So if you don't have that, I wonder what is making that flexibility. Maybe we can talk about that in a chat sometime. That's something I'm curious about. Yeah, having phone on silent is a good idea, except if you're expecting phone calls. I'd also recommend using Do Not Disturb feature on iOS. I've never used Apple software or Apple products except for an iPod back in the day. Hashtag boomer. Sylvia asks, what about tasks, aspects of life that I'm not passionate about? They are not important, but are necessary for survival. Daily life, gathering resources for future purposes. I'm struggling to know what you're talking about. Are you talking about going to the shop and buying your groceries and stuff? They're kind of important. Necessary for survival, daily life, gathering resources. How do I motivate myself to do dull, soulless stuff, which sometimes takes hours of work and is not possible to outsource it? I think we need to have a conversation. I'm not sure what you mean. Like, I would recommend that you put absolutely everything in, like chores. Like, you mightn't like chores, but you know, they've got to be done. It's it's important, right? It's important to live in a clean, hygienic environment. You mightn't like doing it, but it's important. So I wouldn't say not important if that's what you're specifically talking about. Yeah, good point, Andres. What's your work time to leisure time ratio on a regular day? Differs. Differs. Some days I'll have lots of clients, some days I might have many. And I would recommend that you find your own balance. I'm not going to tell you how much leisure time and how much work time you're going to have. At the end of the day, if you've more leisure time to work time, you're probably going to suffer the consequence of that. There's consequences for everything in life. So you are the one that is going to feel the pinch on that. You know, there's no right answer to that. It's what you want to get done, how much motivation you have to get those things done. At the end of the day, you're the loser or the winner. So I'm not going to say how much you should lose or win. It's up to you. A job which is not the passion or helping your family, friends with bigger projects. So for me, this is why I'm doing this. I would encourage you to discover what your mastery mission is, something that you find purpose and meaning in, and that you can put all of your time into eventually and create the life that you want. That's the whole reason why I'm doing this, to encourage you to map out exactly what it is that is your mastery mission and to help you understand where your soul is leading you to. If you're in a job, like I've worked for 15 years in a job I hated, I know how it feels. It's not nice, but I took steps while I was working there to educate myself, and I went hell for leather doing things perpendicular to my job until I was in a position to leave. And it was the best thing I ever did. But it took a lot of conscious effort to study. I studied like my whole university course while I was working full time, sometimes doing 60-hour weeks. It was tough, but it was worth it. I wanted to do something in the human intervention fields, and I'm very proud to have achieved it. So I would recommend doing the hard work. Nobody's going to give you the life you want. You have to dig deep and get in there and understand what it is hits you in the heart. What are your values? What what is it that's going to move the dial for you? What is the life that you want? This requires true introspection, sitting with yourself, really understanding yourself, knowing yourself. Socrates was the man. He said, "Know thyself." We need to know ourselves to answer these questions. So I know we've spoken before, and we can have another conversation if you want about this, but it's really important. Yeah, like I would encourage you to reach out and we can have a discussion about this. I've gone on for 50 minutes. I really didn't mean to go so long. I hope this has been useful. Let me know in the comments if this has been useful. If it's not, I'm sorry, but that's all I've got for you in terms of this. Have a read of the workbook. Get clear on the different stages for yourself and give it a go. Go at the 90-day cycle. Start falling in love with Google Calendar. Google Calendar is my master, my chosen master. It tells me what to do, and I love it because it comes from me. So that's what I would recommend you all do. Get at it and let me know how it goes. I will be back tomorrow for day 4, the penultimate day of this challenge, with my good friend Kevin Flanagan, and we are going to talk real talk with you guys about your relationship with yourself, how you tell stories and sometimes believe those stories in your head, and how to do that relationship in a better way. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for joining me today. I will talk to you all tomorrow. Love each and every one of you that is doing this. It's going to be worth it in the end. I will talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.